It was an annual general meeting with a difference for the Newcastle Netball Association. Last night they announced a $4,000 sponsorship deal with Buttercup Bakeries, and the man who helped negotiate the deal, night second rower Tony Butterfield, was there to lend support. The Greater Newcastle Permanent also renewed its sponsorship, their money earmarked for Newcastle representative teams. Association President Del Saunders says it's also a promising year on the courts. So far, 350 teams have registered for the season, which kicks off April 7th. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
He's already stepped out more than 150 kilometres and shows no signs of tiring. 3 days ago, Nobby Young put his Sydney postie deliveries on hold to walk around Australia to raise money for life education centres. As he stopped over in Swansea this morning, people were keen to lend their support and money. He's already collected more than $100,000 and hopes everyone he meets will donate at least $1. But the distance hasn't been without pain. Nobby is already having trouble with blisters. Every few hours he has to stop and puncture them. He doesn't rest for long. A few minutes later and he's off again, this time with a postie escort. Nobby hopes to complete his round Australia trip this time next year and says he has all sorts of thoughts to keep him busy while he walks. As he walked into Newcastle this afternoon, people continually offered encouragement. Nobby will stay in Newcastle tonight and hopes to be past Kurua by tomorrow.
Traffic on the New England Highway just north of Branxton was stopped briefly this morning as police scientific officers continued their investigations. Precise measurements and photographs will be used to create a model of the scene for a coronial inquiry. The driver of the semi, which crashed into the cars which had stopped at roadworks, has been charged with culpable, dangerous and negligent driving and will appear in Singleton Court next month. 4 vehicles were crushed, concertinaed when a semi failed to pull up on the Strait stretch of road. Killed were 52-year-old Ross Burge from Belmont in one car. Dick and Beryl Apps, aged in their 60s, from Muswellbrook, were in the first car to be hit.
I got a call from the police informing me. First I thought it was my family, and then I found out it's just as bad.
Dick and Beryl Apps were described by good friend Jack Tiedemann as salt-of-the-earth types. The couple had only just retired from running a Muswellbrook motel. They'd bought a new house and were headed for Newcastle on a shopping trip for furniture.
So went to school together. Childhood sweethearts. Married. We had 8 kids. And now they've died together.
The Clean Up Australia message is getting around. On Sunday, more than 600 communities from the northern tip of Australia to the Antarctic, the east and west coasts will join forces to wage war on rubbish. In the 4th year of the campaign, the Clean Up Council has acquired its own garbage truck, now on a promotional tour of the state, stopping in to enlist the help of students at Cessnock's Mount View High.
I think they should clean up to help their bit, to do their bit.
It is better clean up because we need a tighter world.
And every time we throw a cigarette butt out the window or a takeaway container, these are the young people who have to pick it up. And I think as adults we should be aware of what we're doing to our kids.
Cessnock City Council has for several years championed clean-up causes and, according to Mayor Marie Callaghan, an added sweetener to this one is that rubbish collected here will be trucked to Sydney for disposal. A turnaround from controversial plans for Sydney to dump in the Hunter.
As everyone knows, I think there is a proposal for Sydney garbage to come to Cessnock. Well, we're just letting them know that they're getting some of ours this time.
It's one of the greatest tragedies ever told. A Scottish nobleman destined to be king, but tormented by guilt and unhappiness after he murders his rival. It's an ageless drama that's been set in modern times.
The themes are as modern today as they were 200 years ago. Things like ambition and greed and lust for power, those things never change.
Rhett Walton plays Macbeth. Penny Cook stars opposite as his lady.
They are two halves of a whole, I think. He has a severe attack of conscience just before the deed is done. She becomes his willpower and he becomes her hands. He does it, but she helps spur him on.
Macbeth opens at the Playhouse tonight. Melinda Smith, NBN News.
The once pure waters of the Williams River are being tainted with a dangerous poison.
It appears that blue-green algae in the Williams is getting worse. We need to do something now.
Today, about 50 farmers and water experts met to try and find some answers to the algae. It's a natural occurrence in minute amounts, but when extra phosphorus and nitrogen are added, it can become toxic. Farmers admit their fertilisers washing into the river can boost the danger.
I guess we've all done our bit, but I think that there are certain people about who tend to blame the farmers rather more than they should, because I don't think the farmers are any more to blame than anybody else.
Runoff from towns and sewage flows can also boost blue-green levels. At Clarencetown last year, people were warned not to swim in the river due to dangerous algae levels. For the farmers, the Department of Agriculture says their damage levels can be easily cut by stopping erosion. Fertiliser amounts can be kept up, but grass and tree cover must be maintained.
Phosphorus, which causes the problems in the river, and hence the blue-green algae, gets into the river through erosion mainly. It doesn't wash in water or anything else. It's off land, it's mainly through erosion. Anything to maintain ground cover will stop that erosion and reduce the problem in the river.
Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Australian Manganese Limited in Newcastle is one of only 6 companies in the world that makes EMD, a vital component of batteries. Australia exports EMD to a handful of manufacturers in Japan, America and Europe. Internationally, it's a small but intensely competitive industry. The company hopes a research project at Newcastle University will give them a competitive edge. Honours student Troy Farrell is working under the guidance of Dr Sean McElwain.
We can use mathematics to model the situation that's going on in the battery, and by solving the different equations that come out of that particular model, then we'll learn about certain fundamental parameters that are necessary to make these batteries operate better.
Researchers aim to make the essential component of batteries outlast any other in the world.
That will be helpful to the battery companies to increase their market share. That will be helpful to us to get our product to those companies, because we're going to have the best EMD in the world. That's our aim.
For the last 49 years, Mrs Sylvia Hurst has not known what happened to her husband, who went missing in a Royal Air Force raid over France. It was just a few weeks after D-Day. Pilot Officer Donald William Mason was flying a Typhoon. He didn't return from the mission.
Never held out any hope. We always thought he'd come down in the ocean.
But Mrs. Hurst has been told a French farmer has located the plane and the pilot's remains. Today she was awarded her late husband's campaign medals. Her daughter, Judith Colvin, just 3 when her father went missing, was also given the VIP treatment, a seat in the latest in fighter technology. Judith is relieved to know what happened to her father, a man who she never really knew.
I think the big question that has been answered for us is that not only do we know where he is, but we know that he didn't suffer.
She had worried he'd been taken captive and died in a prison camp. Pilot Officer Mason will be buried next week at the Bayeux Cemetery in France. 4 of the family will fly there for the service.
Low loaders transported the 148-tonne stern section of the sub from the Australian Submarine Corporation's Tomago slipways. It's taken the company more than a year to build the first of 5 modular sections for Australia's latest Collins-class submarine. The pieces will be taken to Adelaide for assembly. The towering tail section gives an indication of the scale of the subs once complete. More than 14 metres in length and equipped with the latest computer weaponry and backup systems, they'll be crewed by 40 submariners. The first voyage for this part of a sub, though, was down the Hunter River to Newcastle.
The program is for one of these each year for the next 4 years.
The $4 million section was barged alongside a heavy lift ship for the most delicate stage of the operation. Onboard cranes attempting to swing the subsection clear of its barge and into place on deck. It's slow going, the ship listing heavily under the weight. Loading could continue for hours into the night. Andrew Lobb reporting, NBN News.
Newcastle sprinter Paul Henderson came back to form at the meeting after a depressing run of injuries last year. For months he's had nothing else but the titles on his mind. He finished second, a result that still has his coach in raptures today.
It was his best ever time, 20.36. Damien Marsh, who won the event, was undefeated all year. Probably the fastest 200 metre times I think have probably been run with Australians in it.
Stockton runner Narelle Parr had a tighter finish. She claimed the national 800 metre title by 1/100th of a second. The judges called for a photo before announcing the winner.
I didn't think I'd won at first. It took them a while to announce the winner. I thought she just got me on the line, but as it turned out, I just beat her.
Narelle was off the track and back into the books studying today at Newcastle University, but says the excitement hasn't worn off.
Can relax, got a few parties coming up so I can socialise for a change now instead of training all the time.
Both runners are now on course for a host of representative meetings overseas and ultimately running for Australia at the Commonwealth Games next year.
Representatives from the Ethnic Community Council, Hamilton Chamber of Commerce and Newcastle City Council gathered for a think tank today, setting goals and the ground rules for Fiesta 93. It'll be held on Sunday, September 12th in Beaumont Street. The road will be closed to traffic and transformed into one big stage featuring ethnic communities from the Hunter and the Central Coast.
Their own flavour in foods and everything like that, their arts and craft, their culture, their dancing, and of course the parade is the highlight of it when the floats come down the street.
A similar festival was held in Beaumont Street 2 years ago under the banner of Carnivale. It attracted 40,000 people. Organisers believe this year's celebration of our ethnic communities will prove just as popular.
When they see such multiculturalism in one street at one time, they can experience a whole variety of effects on themselves. It's the curiosity factor with Beaumont Street, this street that was so badly affected, how it's rebuilt itself.
Fiesta 93 will cost $15,000 to stage. Mr Parker says it's a worthwhile investment. He estimates the event will generate $100,000 for the local economy. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
The Cays Beach development was raised at Council last night by Alderman Greg Piper. He wants to see the development halted until Council can find out what Gordon Pacific has planned.
I don't believe that we should keep just giving time to the integrated resort development project. The project that we all must be pretty sure is not going to be an integrated resort development. My major fear, Mr Mayor, is that what we're going to have is residential components being pushed ahead.
The residential component was a small part of the original $800 million proposal, which included a 5-star resort, hotels and 2 golf courses. But so far, 6 development consents have lapsed without any major work being done. Instead of calling a halt to the development, Council last night agreed to approach the financially troubled Gordon Pacific to find out if it intends carrying out any of the resort work. Resident Ross Valere, president of the Local Progress Association, believes Council has taken the soft option. Mr Valere says the housing development should not be allowed to go ahead on its own.
If there's not going to be a resort, we don't want a housing complex. The housing was only put in there to support the resort.
Jodie McKay, NBN News. Don Howe's efforts on the Community Liaison Committee were recognised at Lake Macquarie Council last night. In accepting an award for excellence, Mr Howe launched a scathing attack on the Mine Subsidence Board.
The Mine Subsidence Board just is not there doing the job that it's supposed to be.
The committee was set up 2 years ago when the longwall mining of panels 9 and 10 at Taralba Colliery began. Its job was to liaise between residents, FAI Mining and the Mine Subsidence Board. The committee finished its work at the end of last year, but according to Mr Howe, the job was made extremely difficult by the Mine Subsidence Board.
We had a lot of fights and a lot of arguments and a lot of heat in the meetings and also at residents' houses. We had residents that were visibly upset by the attitude of the Mine Subsidence Board.
Mr Howe believes the government should inquire into the operations of the board. He says residents have no fair right of appeal if their claim is denied. District Supervisor with the Subsidence Board, Brian Burton, refutes Mr Howe's claims. He says residents can go to the Land and Environment Court if they're not happy, but in general most residents are pleased with the board's response.
I'm surprised and very disappointed at the same time. I mean, Don has not bothered to come and check the statistics of the claims with the board within the area that has been shown to be affected by mine subsidence. And when I say shown, I mean it's proven by survey. Within that area, the board accepted 98.5% of all the claims lodged.
Jodie McKay, NBN News.
After presiding over half a dozen years of graduation ceremonies, it was Professor Keith Morgan's turn to be on the receiving end of recognition today. In a special ceremony, the retiring Vice-Chancellor had conferred upon him an emeritus professorship and an honorary doctorate of science.
It is a peculiar distinction that universities can confer, and it is a distinction which I am deeply appreciative of.
The honours give Professor Morgan more memories to take away as he prepares to leave the University of Newcastle tomorrow. Since 1987, he's helped steer the uni through some major structural changes, including amalgamation.
I believe that we've now developed a university which has particularly strong professional schools, which has established a very fine research base right across the university.
Professor Morgan is going to holiday in England before taking up a lecturing position in a technology university in Japan. Scott Bevan, NBN News. When Paul Broad became Managing Director of the Hunter Water Board 4 years ago, he was the head of a public utility. Now he's leaving behind a corporation that has gone through massive changes.
We have reduced the cost of the place by about $15 million a year. We have deferred Tilligra Dam by another 30 years. We have got the final stage of user pays in place. So most of the targets we set have been achieved. On the environment side, I don't think we've done as well as we could.
Taking over the reins of an organisation 10 times the size of Hunter Water, Mr Broad expects to use his Newcastle experience to lead the Sydney Water Board into corporatisation. The organisation Mr Broad is to manage apparently has a sullied image in the public eye. According to the respondents in a recent survey, the Sydney Water Board is, among other things, unresponsive, incompetent and keeps people in the dark.
I think that's what our place was in '89. I took over. People tended to retreat it to the bunker, and people became suspicious of it. So I think that's, it's a difficult base to start from, but my role would be the same as here, up front, say it as it is, talk honestly. If you make mistakes, say it's a mistake.
Scott Bevan, NBN News.
Keith Shambrock and his wife Mari are acutely aware of the benefits of regular health checks. Although Keith had no symptoms of prostate cancer, he was routinely screened for it last April. The test revealed a life-threatening tumour.
Well, it was pretty scary. It was pretty scary for me, it was pretty scary for the wife and also for the family.
Keith was operated on and his outlook is now excellent. 1 in 10 men develop prostate cancer. According to Dr. Alex Grant, a lot of men are reluctant to have a routine test for prostate cancer. By the time half of them do, their condition is incurable. In the late stages of this type of cancer, the symptoms are the same as having a benign obstruction of the urinary tract.
You have a poor urinary stream. You may have nocturia, that's getting up a number of times at night to pass water. You may have urinary frequency, that's going every hour or every half hour in extreme cases.
The message from doctors is clear. Lives can be saved if cancer is detected early enough.
I believe that all males from the age of 45 onwards should have a regular checkup done by their local doctor. That includes a rectal examination of the prostate and a blood test. The two are complementary. You should not rely on one or the other.
The treatment involves either radical surgery or radiotherapy. Jane Anderson, NBN News.